Welcome to the Frenzied Frentic Football Podcast, hosted by Coach John Kinecki, Coach John Maury, and Coach Terrence Banks. Thank you for joining in, and now on to our sponsors.
First is Just Play Solution. That's the playbook program that we've been able to utilize the last, I think, 2 to 3 weeks now. Just Play, allowing you to engage and prepare your players to be more efficient. And then, of course, Game Strat. I've been able to use that this past season was great. Game Strat is the #1 choice for coaches looking for a reliable and effective sideline replay system. More coaches are switching to Game Strat because it simply works when it's supposed to work. And unlike other systems, Game Strat is simpler to set up and use, delivers the fastest video transfer times in the industry, and gives you the most in-game tagging capabilities. Check them out at GameStrat.com to find out why more coaches are switching to Game Strat. Okay, so this is John Morick. I've been in the region, which is also known as Northwest Indiana, Valparaiso. I lived in Valparaiso for the past 20 years. I've been at Michigan City High School, just finished up year #2 with them. 26 years of coaching. It would probably take a whole podcast to go down my resume. 13, I think, different stops. Coach Kinecki and I coached for, it was just 1 year at Homewood Flossmoor?
2, John, 2.
2 years. 2 years at Homewood Flossmoor. Learned a ton from the Tom Bailey.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. It's John Kinecki. I'm currently the head coach at Cremoni High School, and I am a transplant to the region. I'm as John's already mentioned, we're both in Northwest Indiana, and I'm currently teaching in Illinois. I've been the head coach at Cremoni since 2013. I've been there since 2007. In that time frame, we've been to 3 state championships. Had a lot of fun doing it. Coached a lot of other places. Had some international experience coaching with the Swedish men's national team and working with the Chicago Force, which is all 11-11 women's tactical football team. I did that from 2007 to 2017, and I was the head coach of the U.S. women's national team for 2 years, 2010 and 2013. And most recently, outside of the U.S., I was the offense coordinator for the Australian women's national team. So had a lot of experience, had a lot of fun, been able to do a lot of football coaching all over the place, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to speak about some more ball today.
Hey, and that brings me up the rear. Terrence Banks spent the last 6 years as the head football coach at Newton High School in Covington, Georgia, which is right outside of Metro Atlanta. Never left the area, so I'm the Southern voice here. Don't know where I'm coaching at next year. We're going to figure that out hopefully in the next 2 months. Just knew it was time for a change, but everything works out like it's supposed to work out. So once I finally hammer down the next details, you guys will know and I know. So
Hashtag free team, free agent.
Yep, team free agent. If I could get my wife to move, it probably would be a little easier, which is kind of funny because she's from a town that just got their first stoplight 3 years ago, but she doesn't want to live in a small town again. So that is an interesting dynamic.
That is for sure.
Guys, how has the off-season been? It's the clinic season. How has the off-season been for you guys? Anything fun you've picked up as we've gotten to the off-season learning stage of the season?
You know, I've obviously had the opportunity to go to a couple of clinics and talk to a couple of coaches. I've spent a lot of my time in the off-season just doing self-analysis and spending time on, the why behind why we either have won games or lost games. And that's where I probably have spent the last 3 or 4 years, the majority of my time, and then trying to apply it to what it is that we're going to do in the fall in order to figure out ways to win more football games.
Me next.
Yeah,
I worked the Indy Clinic a couple weeks ago. Indy Glacier Clinic. It was great. Some dynamic speakers. The thing that I've kind of researched right now is all the shallow stuff, the shallow cross, and looking at work that in for next year. It seems like it's just easy money. Other thing is just like Coach Kanicki was talking about, just some self-study and then just looking at what we're going to do for next year as far as personnel and just reaching out to coaches. I know last week I was able to hop on to XO Clinics. They had a live clinic. They have another one tonight. Last week was offense. This week is defense, so I'm going to take a pass because I need to work on offense more than defense because I'm on that side of the ball. They were really good too. But other than that, I mean, like Coach Kanicki's, we talked this week about when we go to clinics, we almost at times value that time when we sit down with another coach and just talk ball with them. You know, it's kind of that bonus time. So I always like to kind of, you know, pick and choose where I'm going to go as far as speakers goes. But then I try and reach out, whether it be Twitter or if I know I'm going to be in the area, I tell coaches I'm going to be in the area and let's hook up and talk ball. You know, whether you're in the lounge somewhere or the, you know, hotel room, or, you know, sometimes I get lucky and I can sneak into one of the Glacier rooms and talk ball in there.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines as you guys. Well, one thing that not having to currently worry about next year's season kind of refined for me to do, I went back and I kind of looked at that whole template of, you know, of Noah Mazzoni, which is kind of where I started off from and kind of gravitated and looked at some R4 stuff with it, but got back down to that 25 play threshold and looked at, you know, did some analysis of our explosive plays and how many plays we really were good at last year. And I got back to the point that we really ran too much stuff. Though it wasn't a bunch, but still, when you look at that, we probably had about 28 plays that went for at least 12 yards plus. So I kind of looked at how do you take those 28 plays and make sure that you can, you know, mash them up together. And then using the R4 process, looked at, you know, some other stuff to go with it, like was this play a release play, or was this play a rhythm play? And then, you know, are we doing things that automatically fit? So that's kind of where I was in some self-analysis and going to do some more clinicking. But I had the chance last week, like you guys said, went to one of the Glacier clinics here in Atlanta, and I probably spent the first 7 hours just talking to other coaches. But Brett Dearman closed out the show, and he was always good. Having his book and having talked to him before on Twitter, a lot of his stuff had a familiarity with in the RPO game, but heard some good stuff. One interesting tidbit from what he said, and I would love to get you guys' thoughts on this. He plays his best receiver to the boundary, no matter which side the field is on. And, you know, we've all heard about guys who you don't switch to outside receivers, only the inside guys. So I found that interesting that for him, he places his best receiver to the boundary in his system. Any thoughts on that from you guys as far as wide receiver play alignment, on hearing that, you know, preferences, things of that nature?
Well, you're preaching to the choir as far as both Johns are concerned. We love to put the best wide receiver to the boundary. We love to run plays to the boundary. That's one of the things that we learned from Coach Bailey when we were at HF, that, you know, utilize the boundary, because he came from a defensive background, and he talked about how there is space to utilize the boundary, and a lot of defenses like to what they like to do, roll their coverage or roll their strength to the field. So we're going to take advantage of that. Almost to, you know, I've been able to watch a lot of Coach Kanicki film, and it is unbelievable what the defenses try to do to take away what he does. And going back to what you said as far as simplifying the offense, he is the master of simplifying the offense. He only runs about a handful of plays, and we kind of chuckle about it all the time.
Yeah, so I think the boundary is a component of the passing game that it's not often taken advantage of, and it also puts a tremendous amount of stress on the defense when they start to rotate to the boundary, because they have the idea of, the defensive coaches are obviously going to scout where you're at. They start rotating defenders to the boundary, which in turn allows you to have the potential to run the ball much easier to the field. And so then it's just, it's a kind of give and take, and we move people around. But I would definitely say that if we were going to start with the initial setup of the offense, we try to put our better receiver to that boundary. And then after that, we're going to continue to swap that young man around and try to get that person in and involved as much of the offense as we possibly can.
We talk about boundary runs. I don't know how much you guys check them. I'm kind of like you guys. Like we all are stat and nerd freaks. One of the biggest articles that we've put out on the blog probably of the last 2 years has been when Coach K put up about the bash concept. And people, that's kind of the new in vogue thing, right? That happens every year, of course. A few years ago, everybody was power read, and then it became RPO, and now people are looking for the stay ahead of the curve. And kind of the bash concept article, it's already got like over 1,400 views, and you just put it up probably about a month and a half ago. Coach K, kind of, when you look at that bash concept and you show several different ways, how much of a play, what percentage or what kind of, life did that play give your team last year in your run to the state championship?
Well, I think I'll answer the first part. The nice part about the bash play is that it's conflicting a defender. It's conflicting whoever the C-gap defender is. And it's another way to conflict the C-gap defender. And it just gives, it's inverted read for the quarterback, where, the running back is actually running the option piece and the quarterback is running the inside or the outside zone piece. It ended up being a nice compliment. It's a nice add-on, especially when you get to a place where you have overly aggressive defensive ends and they start to take a look at the alignment of your backfield. The second part is, I think that it was, I know that it was a nice part. It was a nice setup. It allows you to run that front side read. It allows you to run, your front side power read. It allows you to run the counter game. And it also, and you can tag all these these particular plays together. And then bash is another concept that gives you some life when running, that particular offense. So we tagged it with our outside zone. We also tagged it with our GT counter game. And it just was another nice fold. And the nice part about adding that is it didn't cost us a whole lot. And I think that one of the things that, John and I talk about all the time is that while that play is a new play, we try to really limit the amount of plays in the offense because, and I don't know who the adage is from, John, you may know, but that the idea that plays are expensive and formations are cheap. And the bash concept allowed us to just add some more, a play out of the same formations, but it was relatively inexpensive as far as practice time was concerned. John, do you recall where did we steal that from?
I'm just trying to go back and figure that. Oh, the plays expensive.
Plays are expensive.
Formations are
cheap.
Cheap. I'd probably have to put that out there to see who said that. Noel Mazzoni likes to talk about that a ton, but I know we've heard about that before. Noel kind of got big.
We were talking about that in 2003, 2004, and that's probably one of those axioms that every offensive coordinator should have in their meeting room. Back up behind them. Plays are expensive, formations are cheap, and if you can figure out a way to install your plays, do nice 3-day install like Coach Banks, and then add some formations. Now all of a sudden you have some things that you have to, the defense has to account for, and for you guys, as far as the offense is concerned, its simplicity is based upon the plays that you're currently running.
And the whole term kind of, I've talked to a couple other coaches, and whether it's bash, whether it's power read, I know some people, power read is with the running back, and some purists want to say that bash is when it's with the motion back. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. That was the other thing is I can't even recall where I discovered power read. I think it probably is from the Tebow days. And then a couple times when we've gone down to Sacred Heart Griffith down in Illinois, talked to them, and I think they got it from University of UNLV. So I know we've loved it. We started running it probably, well, it was state championship when we were in Indiana.
2014, right?
2013 we started running it when our quarterback was a senior, and he was unbelievable. And you've seen tape on him before, and it's just a unbelievable play when you get it on correctly. I'd be interested to see how people have added an RPO component to it, whether it be, I think probably the first thing that people do is they probably a backside slant, but I'd be interested if anyone does a front side RPO. Might have to put that on Twitter to see.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you saying, John? I don't want to step
awesome for us because we started I take that back. 2012 we started running it. Got beat in the semi-state, but before that, kind of got the monkey off our head coach's back. We played in regionals. He had never won a regional title, and we went into 5 overtimes against a team, and at one point we ran it 7 times in a row, and it'd be funny because he'd come to the sideline, and I'm like going, "Okay, coach, what do you got?" And he'd say, "I got Portland." That's what we used to call it back then. And just we get 2 yards, 3 yards, or a touchdown. So, and then the following year we just started kind of developing it so much that it was twice our quarterback rushed for 200 yards during that season, and he was just unbelievable during that run. And I would ask him, how would you know where to hit it? Because the secret sauce is really when you start hitting it backside A, almost like when a running back runs power. And I said, I want to put it in my, data bank for future quarterbacks. And he kind of just looked at me and grinned. He's like, I don't know. I just kind of read it. So
just kind of feel it. When they feel it, they feel it, right? It's a front side C gap run, and then they, the good ones kind of scoot it to the front side A to the back side A, and they just kind of feel their way through it. But it's I'll tell you what, it's a really powerful play, and it made it even more powerful too when you throw a little bit of empty into it. Not only 3x2, but the part of the empty that I don't think coaches employ enough. 4x1 and with or without an attached tight end, and you can really start to put a tremendous amount of stress on the defense when you're incorporating both that power read and the bash action out of those formations.
Yeah, for us, at some point, power read used to be like we didn't have it run as much the last 2 years. Well, with the quarterback we had, probably my first 3 years in Newton, that was his special play, kind of like you said, John, where he ran power read and he was going to be able to get the backside A. He didn't really have a rhyme or reason to how he got there. And basically, it's funny because I think he may have on 25% of plays handed the ball off. The other 75% of the time, it was going to be he was going to pull it even when he shouldn't have. But teams still didn't have a rhyme or reason to slow him down. And so I think, for us, the last couple of years, really hadn't had a quarterback that could run it like him. For us, I thought the play was always special. We talk about it, but it's so hard when that play side tackle is able to climb all the way to that backside linebacker. If he hits him, that's even better. If he gets in his way, that's really when you have that big cavity should the C-gap defender take the stretch. And that was always, we had a guy that could do that could get into that backside guard's way. And so that was always big. As far as the RPO aspect, I've only seen 2 things from it. If you're going to line up in 2x2 and you're going to run the power read into the boundary, then I've seen teams throw the double slants from the field if they're getting that pressure from the field. And then if you're going to run it to the trips, I've seen teams throw that backside slant. So I haven't seen teams do a ton, but I know I've seen it, both ways as far as the RPO aspect. But that's kind of like a pre-snap read. I haven't seen any team do it post-snap. Or I haven't had success with it post-snap either. It's kind of been pre-snap. If you get pressure from where the slant is coming from, then pull it in, throw it, to that location.
Yeah. And Coach, if I could just go back, as I was thinking about the bash play, I think where it puts a tremendous amount of stress on the defense is if, you're running, the outside zone or inside zone, and you have that backside tackle who's actually, or backside defensive end or C-gap defender, and he wants to weld to a down block or a play side step of the offensive tackle. That really, and if you have a guy who can especially move on a jet sweep or coming out of the backfield, that bash play puts a tremendous amount of stress on the defense, because you only really need that defensive end to take 1 to 2 steps towards the center or towards the down blocking tackle. And there is just a ton of separation right now. And you have a guy who just has the ball in his hands, who's just, absolutely puts a tremendous amount of stress on the defense. And now you really start talking about with, obviously, the vertical passing game, and you start throwing plays like bash and dash in, and now you really have a true horizontal stretch on the defense, and you're forcing them to then defend all 53.5, which I think ultimately is all of our goals when it comes to running offensive football.
And I don't know
most definitely.
You guys, I don't know how it is with you guys. I know that all the years I've run it, it's kind of been interesting as I teach my quarterbacks, whether it's when we mesh with the running back, we kind of mesh a little bit longer, and I tell them you truly have to read it. Whereas when we mesh with the jet, the motion, I tell them about 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to keep it. So kind of keep that in the mindset, and it's a shorter shuffle too. I don't know if you guys get that same kind of read.
I don't mess with the in the backfield for whether it's the dash or the bash play. We're generally shuffling about the same, which is one to 2 steps, and then we're making a decision. The use some old school option terminology. We're going to ride and decide, and we don't really mess with it because it takes a long time to teach those guys. And we're going to teach them as soon as they come in the door as 9th graders, and once they get it, we don't really quite mess with it. But obviously there is some timing issues, especially from the different launch points, and I think that's probably something that as a coach you have to decide, do you want the ball snapped when the sweeper's coming at the tackle, where he's at the tackle, at the backside tackle, halfway between, and those are sort of things that you have to work out with, because each of the guys that you have at the perimeter, especially if you're running some fly sweep action, could cause you some definite issues when it comes to snapping that ball and getting in the hands and meshing it up correctly with the quarterback.
Yeah, we work a drill similar like the old school veer mesh, where we'll line them up on the hash, and we'll have the read key, whether it be an extra manager or myself, and we'll go from hash to hash, and that works out well. We'll throw everybody in there.
Yeah, I think that's a most definite. I think depending on where I link back up next year, just getting back into that whole power read. I think I asked that question on the Facebook page, and a lot of people chimed in. I know you did, Coach K, about had bash kind of replace power read, and I think it's a place for both of them if you're using it effectively in your offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like anything else. A couple of years ago, teams were taking away our GT game, and they were doing a great job of it. In fact, 2012, we won our first state championship. We could not run the GT counter to save our life. So we actually were running some inside zone, which, it's not something we normally run. But as you start to evolve with your run game, you run some outside zone. A lot of people want to call it looks like pin and pull. It's not actually pin and pull. And then you add a little GT game to it, you bash, and you have the dash. And I think at the end of the day, you add some old school wing T trap in there. Whatever you're going to do from a run game, I think you want to try to limit it to a handful of schemes, and then you want to make sure that you're not changing the blocking for the offensive line. And John will tell you that's my biggest pet peeve. Whatever we do, we don't want to change a whole lot of blocking when it comes to the offensive line. We want to make sure that we're those guys are consistent. And if it's a down block day one, it's a down block in November. And obviously there's some changes here and there, but you won't see a whole lot of crazy stuff added from us from week in and week out, just because I really firmly believe those guys have to, meaning the guys up front have to feel confident in their techniques that they employ throughout the season.
That goes back to the adage where we're talking about the formations and plays, whereas, when we're in Sunday meetings or Saturday meetings talking about putting in a new play, that's the first thing we talk about is, okay, well, you want to put in a new play. How are you going to protect it? How are you going to block it? I love to put in new plays, but if we can not mess with the offensive line, that's key.
And Coach Banks, I'm sorry, go ahead. Coach, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's, and I think you would echo that sentiment. I mean, when it comes to, the offense that we want to run, and we want to go fast, I don't need the guys up front thinking. Like I just, I need them to just, okay, it's a odd front, it's an even front. This is the play. How do we run it? And I think that's probably, one of those things when you're looking to how do you develop and set up your offense. I see that question a lot, and I saw it a lot when I was a younger coach. And I kind of stumbled upon just the importance of making sure that whatever you're going to do, make sure those guys up front know their rules and that they can execute their rules very quickly.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's talking to a young friend of mine who's offensive coordinator. I've probably met with him several times over this off season. Just expounding to him kind of that same theory. Like he had been an offensive line coach, but had moved to quarterbacks at his first OC gig, and I said, there's so much stuff that looks good on paper, but you got to get rid of it. What can you being being a OL coach, what can your guys, those five up front, execute well? I don't know if it's one of it's kind of funny. One of the things I've been looking into this all season, Coach Maddox, Dub, he told me about this mid-zone concept probably about 2-3 years ago, and I threw it to the side like, we got inside zone, we don't need anything else. But now that I've had some free time and he's done some more videos on it, just looking back at it, like it's the same blocking scheme. The running back just reads somebody different. Like, holy cow, I could have been a fool. I could have been running this play and giving different backfield actions, but my offensive line is doing the same thing. And as you just talked about, that's the most important thing. Those five guys up front, being able to have 3-4 looks of a run play, and the offensive line is doing the same thing is huge. And I think that's definitely important. I think that's what we're all looking to get to. So, guys, let me ask this question. One thing from last year that you kind of stumbled on that you stumbled on in the season that everybody doesn't know about, but you can kind of share with people that are listening to us. Is there anything that you did last year that was good that you kind of stumbled on that you think people ought to look into for this upcoming season that could help them in their journey to winning more games?
You want to start, John?
No, I'm not at liberty to say anything because I don't want to give it out to the opponents. That'll be the after party discussion. I think overall it goes back to the whole formations of just getting back to the old school of adding a tight end and wing, adding two H-backs, two sniffers. I've kind of dabbled into some single wing stuff that's been very good. So it kind of goes back to, everybody's spread, everybody's in 10 personnel, and then suddenly you put a tight end in or put an H-back and they don't know how to, some teams don't know how to line up to it. Other teams obviously are great defensive minds and they have no problems with it. But then when you add in a tight end wing, that's a little sketchy for some defenses, especially when they're used to seeing no edge, just seeing the tackle out there.
we tried to run some of your tight end wing stuff week 1 of the playoffs. Didn't we had a little bit limited amount of success, John. Thanks for that. I think I was asking about some odd front stuff, and that's probably something that, you know, Coach Banks and Coach Mo, I think that we all probably got in this at the same time. Shoot, John and I were we were trading VHS tapes when I first started coaching. John had been doing it for a while, and I think that developing a network of coaches, whether it be guys online or guys in real life, has helped out my growth as a coach tremendously. I think I've spent a lot of my time in the last couple of years on just the performance piece. And if you get a chance, Chris Corfist, he runs a speed school called Slow Guy Speed School, or Tony Holler at Plainfield North. Those guys have done some tremendous things as far as the things that they're currently writing about, and just the performance of your athletes. And it's helped shape a lot of what I do. And I'm currently, working with the RPR, which is something that people haven't heard before. It's called Reflexive Performance Reset. And we do a lot of that, and we do a lot of breathing with our kids, and a lot of stuff that, as a football coach, you wouldn't necessarily think that you spend a lot of time on the physiology of your athletes, but we spend a tremendous amount of time at my school on the physiology of our athletes and ensuring that they're put in the best possible situation to be successful when it comes to their bodies. That's I probably spend more of my time on that now than anything else, because in addition to being that football coach at my high school, I do all the strength and conditioning stuff as well in the off season with my guys.
Yeah, and you know what, that kind of alludes me to my next point. Not to go into the details on this one, but me and you have talked about your practice schedule, and one thing that we did that I liked, but you kind of went next level with it, so I'm trying to get there, Coach K, is that we did the whole No Sweat Wednesdays this year, and we went in the morning. I think getting that, and that whole idea I got from Coach Henry, who was the OC at Lassiter, and then you kind of expanded on it, how you practice, which led me to Corfish and the Coach Holler, and the TLC. But we went to the No Sweat Wednesdays, and we went in the morning, and we did like an hour and 15 minutes, and it freed up Wednesday afternoon for young kid practice, film, tutorial, study hall. And we didn't get a chance because we just started when the season got here, but you could take that. If you're scared to go into this whole practicing without pass thing, which I think is great, because you guys don't either, and I no longer subscribe to that whole theory that you got to hit 3 days a week for 30 minutes to be tough. I think our game has evolved, and our kids have evolved past that. Yes, blocking and tackling are, of course, essential, but that whole Neanderthal old school way has kind of evolved. But we went to, you take that, and if I was a coach, you talk about being with parents, like, hey, if you really got to schedule something that cannot be done during school, maybe Wednesday afternoon kind of becomes that time frame when we're doing film or study hall. Our young kids are practicing. Then on Thursday, we studied up a little bit, and then we went out and played Friday. Our record does not indicate from last year, doesn't indicate that it worked, but I think we were refreshed, and there's some other things that led to our record. So I like that idea. And then, like I say, talking to you this off season and getting into the whole practice thing, which I'm sure after people hear this, that will become a big question. And, the biggest idea I've already stole from you, no matter where I'm at next year, is the PRS thing, the pass, run, screen idea. And guys, we'll have to wait till the next podcast to kind of get Coach to fill you in on all the good details. But or you just come to our Facebook page and we'll give you a tad bit of a blurb. That way it's not out on the full internet yet. But that's kind of been the one thing that I stumbled upon from last year that kind of got me in this direction.
We're a little opposite in the sense of, I coach with another head coach that's been 20 plus years, and we're the same way. We go Mondays is a big install day. We go in the field, we're only in helmets. Tuesday is we're kind of easing into the week, and we're only in uppers. And then Wednesday for us is a big that's our only hitting day. We're in full pads that day. We put in all special teams or hit upon all special teams. And then Thursday we kind of back down, but we're still in uppers. I've kind of gone back and forth numerous times whenever I've had to change to a different school. You know, classic, the pregame Thursday was always helmets, and, you know, everywhere I've went, we've changed it to uppers, or at times we've been in full pads just to kind of get that mentality of it's the day before the game, be mental. Whereas, you know, if they're just in helmets, they're not as focused.
Yeah, that's a interesting discussion that teams have, and that having done both, you know, it's you know, we'll see how that continues to evolve, especially with everybody getting to practice restrictions.
Yeah, I think, Coach Banks, I think that while, you know, it takes while it looks easy on paper, I think that you really have to be scripted and what it is that you want to do when you start making those changes to your practice, because you want to keep your guys engaged. And many of our student athletes have went through programs where, you know, that's all they did, you know, their youth, you know, playing youth programs, hit. And this is more of more choreography and more just the honing of skills. And it's a different way to go about it. And it causes some consternation for your coaches. And sometimes your kids are a little bit, at least initially, you know, not as engaged as you'd like them to be as they figure it out. But it's as a football coach and a coach of any contact sport, I mean, you've got to figure out ways to still get your point across, still get your learning done without actually putting your athletes in, a situation where they could potentially get hurt. Because ultimately, we want to make sure that our guys are playing on Friday or Saturday. That's the most important, not whether they were given 110% on a Wednesday. And I know that may sound like sacrilege to some people, but I'm not necessarily, obviously I want them to do what they're supposed to do, but we're preparing for a game on Wednesday, but we want to make sure that we're putting ourselves in this situation to win a game on Friday or Saturday. And I honestly believe that happens when your athletes are as fresh as they possibly can be.
I agree. I guess that's our 50-minute mark-ish for this first podcast. We'll have to do this again depending on how much people like this one. I had fun. I learned a lot just by talking to you guys, as I always do. Now I'm going back to explore this whole wide receiver and the boundary thing, since you guys kind of co-signed on it. Any last thoughts from you two guys?
Had a lot of fun. We'll just have to correlate, 3 different schedules and try to put together the next one. I'll just go back to thanking our pseudo sponsors, GameStrat, Sideline Replay, and then Just Play Solutions, the playbook, powerful playbook. It's been fun.
Yeah, I love talking ball, and this is my life's work, and I truly believe that through the sport that we're able to do a lot of great things for young men in the communities that we work with, and so we need a lot of great guys in this profession, and this is just another awesome way to highlight the things that we're doing. And I appreciate Coach Banks and Coach Mork, all the work you guys have done with the blog and all the work that you guys got this set up, and I appreciate it. And let's keep this ball rolling.
All right, there you have it.